Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast, The Navs Effect. I'm your host, Naveen Ganglani, as usual, and today we've got a guest from. Are you from Miami itself, Brian? Or you're from New York, right?
No. Yeah. I'm super New York. Super New York.
Super. So I actually visited New York for the first time a few months ago. I liked it a lot. I love New York. Gotta check out Miami. But Bryan Fonseca is joining us. He is a constant contributor to the Five on the Floor podcast and network, Five Reasons Sports Network, I should say. If you've been following the Miami Heat or you follow Miami sports, you definitely know who they are. When I listen to the podcast, whether that's like after the game or maybe previewing a game like a playoff especially, it's like evident immediately who you are, probably just because you talk a little differently from like Alex and Ethan and even Greg. Is that just like a New York thing? Like is that what you'd call a New York accent? And by the way, I live all the way out here, like in the Philippines, so I'm oblivious
Oh,
to this kind of things.
I would say I don't know if it's a strictly New York thing. Some of it has to be, right? Because that's where I'm from. I don't know. I have that quality, like even in my friends group, like you can tell when it's me speaking, and I'm not even saying that in like a powerful type of way. It's just I guess I have a distinct way of delivering things, and I'm very blunt. I curse a lot, probably too much. I would argue too much. I would say, yeah, there's definitely some New York in there, just being like straight up with people, direct. You could also get lyrical in what you say, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, a combination of different things. And there are some people from New York who don't know how to talk, and still get jobs in this industry. So it is what it is. Maybe it's a New York thing, maybe it's not.
Interesting. Well, I like the tone of how you speak though in the podcast. It gives it a different vibe, so to say. And you are
I've
right
heard that
about.
throughout the season, and I take it as a compliment. So thank you.
Oh, that you should definitely you should. But definitely the New York thing is true. So when I visited the States a few months ago, I go to the East Coast first. It's New York, right? And then I go to LA after, and you can just notice the difference in the people right away, or just how they speak, particularly that straightforwardness. But
Yeah.
anyway, that sounds like a topic for another day. We're here to talk about the Heat. The Heat are currently in. It's insane to say, given where they were at the end of the regular season, to be honest with you. But they're in the Eastern Conference semifinals. They're tied 1-1 against the New York Knicks. It's an 8-5, a rare 8-5 matchup in the second round of the playoffs. Two games in New York. Knicks have home court advantage. Heat steal it in game one. In my opinion, they should have stolen game two as well. That was there for the taking. And even if you're kind of going back to Miami with the series tied 1-1 and you get two games at home, maybe it's just because I'm remembering the 2016 series against Toronto, where the Heat won game one, they almost won game two, and then they lost game two. They ended up losing the series in 7 games. They lost game three at home. But the Heat are a better team than the Knicks, in my opinion. And that's why, assuming Jimmy Butler comes back, that's why they should win the series. Now, before we talk about that, I first want to thank the listeners of this podcast. We recently got to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which means I am monetization eligible. So thank you to all the listeners and the viewers who've been watching and listening past few months. Also those who have been listening on Spotify. Now, I guess that's my first question. Let's get right to it, right?
Yeah.
Are the Heat better than the Knicks? And I think even without Hero, even without Oladipo, they are better than New York. Number one is because Jimmy Butler is the best player in that series, a healthy Jimmy Butler. And when you look at the defensive discipline of Miami, how they seem to be so in sync with rotations and how they know who to help, when to help, helping the helper, and their offense, how suddenly the 3-point shooting has picked up. And it just feels like there's this new energy with how they're moving the ball and their disposition to going about the effort to play with. So let's go up front here. Are the Heat better than the Knicks? And would it be a disappointment if the Heat lose the series against New York?
The Knicks were favorites in the series, betting wise. And not like a huge favorite, but a pretty considerable one, considering like the price that you can get them at, and that immediately flipped once the Heat won game one. I would say that the Knicks have better depth. I would say that the Heat are better at the top. I think that the Heat have the best two-way players in the series with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. And Bam Adebayo, I know, has been the topic of conversation in the playoffs again. But I think Bam Adebayo is the most you don't understand what you're actually watching basketball player probably in the NBA, because I think he gets overly criticized for things that Eric Spoelstra would tell you, like, this is what we want from him. He would say that word for word, right? Not we as in me on the team, but I'm saying we as in Eric Spoelstra saying we, because I don't use we. And when it comes to Bam in particular, you want him to do more offensively, but he does so much defensively where it's like he's trying to activate shooters on offense and they're trying to use him in those different ways. Like, a lot of people criticize his game too. Part of the reason they shot so well from three early on and why they shot so many threes, period, is because Bam was able to get those guys open, be it screens, be it just passing the ball, whatever the case may be, just roaming around to sort of nail and being able to get Max Strus free, get Gabe Vincent free, attract attention. And they're also the Knicks were doubling him on drives for a large portion of the game. But ultimately, in terms of who's better, like, yeah, I would say that the Heat with Jimmy Butler should be better, but they were not favorites. I don't think the media considers them better. I don't think most people watching basketball consider them to be the better team, even though they have the best player in the series, and that part of it is clear. And I do think that the Knicks have better depth. However, the Heat did win game one at home or at Madison Square Garden, and now they're going to go home and they're going to have two games at home. And if they win those two, I would give them the series. And for the Knicks, like, this is more of a house money thing for the Heat for me because of where they were all season. They were the 8th seed, and that's their own doing. And turning it around, and none of us expected them to get to the second round. The Knicks have an opportunity, golden opportunity, that we don't know, based on their history, they might not get this again for 10 years, that they are facing an 8th seed in the semifinals with home court. And I think it's a bigger catastrophe if the Knicks lose the series than the Heat, because the Heat are a little bit more playing with house money here. Not totally, because it's another Jimmy Butler year. Next year is going to be year 13, and he's going to be, 34, I believe, in September. But I think there's more pressure, I guess is how I would word it, on the Knicks to win this series, because when are they going to get an opportunity like this again?
Yeah, see, good point there. Now, a few good points actually you made. One, feels like with Jimmy, he gets better as he ages. That jump shot's getting better as he ages. He's getting even stronger. He's getting better in the post in terms of his fundamentals. Like, he's worked in the post close to the rim now compared to just when he first got to Miami. It was already pretty good when he first got to Miami. It feels significantly better. And I would say that's got a lot to do with the work he's put in behind the scenes with Chris Berkeley, because even the way he hunts for his jump shot, the way he gets to his spots, you can see there's a confidence with he's shooting now that wasn't exactly not there, but it's just more evident now. I always compare it to the 2021 series against the Bucks, where they put Giannis on him, they put Lent on him, and he kind of couldn't really figure it out yet because he wasn't trusting his jump shot as much as I think he does now. But now, just adding that extra layer to his game, you can see the difference. Now, with Bam, there were two plays that stuck out to me in game one. So pick and roll, right? Knicks kind of send the extra help. Bam gets the short roll. And when he gets in that short roll, he gets in that nail area, that free throw line area. He has the option to pull up for the jump shot, which was money during the regular season. He did lead the NBA in points in the paint at one point, but kind of hasn't had the same touch in the postseason so far. But then he also has the option of, kicking it out to Caleb in the corner. I think he did that in game one. Caleb got an open three. Then, or maybe finding a cutter, like Jimmy cutting through the baseline. You're right, Brian. He does so many things on defense, just switching out. Like, Brunson won't even challenge him. I haven't checked for game two, but in game one, Brunson took like one shot against Bam, made it, but that was probably an easy shot. But he's just not challenging Bam, and these Knicks guys don't want to challenge Bam. Maybe RJ a little bit, not really anyone else. Let's see.
Randall did
Yeah.
it a few times early in the first half, and Knicks fans were getting hype on Twitter saying that
Right.
that he was too much for Bam Adebayo, and that wasn't happening really in the second half.
Yeah.
And Julius Randle hasn't had a ton of success against Bam historically. It's just really been those three plays and then one bullshit 40-point game.
Yeah, for bullshit. That's true. No, Randall had its step back three against Bam in the first half, and then I didn't even check Twitter after that because I knew people would be freaking out. But
a good
now,
shot. Good shot for Randall.
good
And
tough shot.
He just
made
had
it.
his best 2 playoff games in back-to-back games, the closer against the Cavs in this one. So
Exactly.
we'll see. Maybe that continues, but I don't know. His 3 says it might not.
Well, I'm expecting a bad Randall game coming up soon. One of those, like maybe 7 of
That's what
22,
I'm saying.
like in Miami. One thing about Bam though, do you kind of wish he got to the free throw line more, given his athletic side? Yeah, see there, that's where my thing.
He's shooting because it's not aggression. Aggression is not the issue in the playoffs with Bam. He's actually shooting more shots, field goal attempts than he has in the playoffs. At least before last game, I'm not sure where it is now, but he was per 36 and per game most field goal attempts in the playoffs in his career. The aggression is not the problem. It's rather he's not driving with the intent to sort of finish. He's kind of just settling for the mid-range jumper. And really, it's because like part of me can't blame him because they're dropping so deep and they're not, you're not going to get a defensive 3-second call in that scenario. And he's just taking what's given to him. But I feel like the mistake he's making, this is one of the areas I do get on him, right? Because I'm very high on him and I am appreciative of what he does as a basketball player more than I think anybody outside of Greg Sylvander. You know what I mean? Like who nicknamed him No Ceiling. Like I think he's arguably the best pound for pound defensive player in the NBA. And as an offensive sort of almost Swiss Army knife, like he could do a lot. And I think he's already proven he could be the second scorer on a contender, on a championship level team who got to the finals or whatever. Probably best suited as a third one because Jimmy Butler would be first, and then you need like another creator in there, whatever. Maybe they have that next year. But in terms of one thing he's doing that I think he needs to sort of get out of is sometimes he waits. He gets the ball and he waits. He'll size up his man, whether it's Brook Lopez, Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle, and he waits. And Bam is most effective when he gets it and goes, makes quick decisions. Because the reason why he's a matchup issue for some of these other bigs and why he can't play center is because of his quickness. It's not a strength thing or whatever. He doesn't need to size up guys and, he'll pass up an open shot, take like 2 or 3 dribbles, a hesitation, and then pull up a contested shot that's like 2 feet to the right, going to a spot that he wanted to get to, but it's a heavily contested jumper, and sometimes he makes it. And it's like, okay, good shot, but that was just weird. Like the process of that, like you're making it more difficult than it needs to be. Take the shot right away, or what I'd rather him do is drive right away. Just get an angle on him, use your speed, get to your right or your left if you want. He doesn't like finishing with his left as much, but get to your right hand if you could, right? Don't force it, but at the same time, like get in there and get contact, because the reason why he works is because he's able to get to the line and make enough of his free throws. He's not getting to the line enough in the playoffs. He did in game 2, which is the weird thing. He didn't have the field goal attempts, but he had the free throw attempts. It's like, for me, the process just has to be a little bit cleaner, a little bit more straightforward. He needs to make it easier on himself, and the team, frankly, needs to make it easier for him because they don't do a great job. And this is something that Alex Toledo talks about a lot on 5 on the Floor. The team itself doesn't do a great job of getting Bam open with down screens, with inverted pick and rolls, with just better matchups and isolation, getting him switches on smaller guys or guys that he can go by, bigger guys that are like plotting and 16 feet away, things of that nature, and using his speed to get around him. He's not a guy that's going to post you up, back you down, and like, first of all, who's doing that now? Joel Embiid is, maybe Jokic, but like he's not one. Jokic, that's never who he was, right? So you got to make it you got to make it a little bit cleaner, because you'll get better looks that way, right? No, he's not somebody who's going to average 25 and 12. How many NBA players do that?
Right. See,
like it's okay.
When I was rewatching some plays from game 2, when I was watching it live, first I'm thinking, right, they need to find a way to get Bam going more, get to the rim, get to the free throw line. You mentioned 7 free throw attempts. but I feel like he has the potential to be someone who gets like 9 or 10 free throw attempts a game, considering his speed advantage over most big men and the pace of how many possessions there are in games nowadays. But then I was rewatching the game and I'm like, okay, Gabe's on fire. Caleb's hitting outside shots. Kevin Love is hitting outside shots. Lowry didn't have a great game, but Duncan and Strus, they're doing their thing. So, the ball is moving, the offense is moving, and we know that Spo likes it when a lot of the guys are getting their touches and it's equal opportunity. But especially if Jimmy's gonna play the rest of the series with an angle that's not 100%, it would be good to see Bam get those inverted pick and rolls. Maybe some pistol actions where he takes Robinson off the dribble, and even if the defense collapses on him, that's shooters to the weak side, corner, hockey pass, and maybe Jimmy cuts, or the ball keeps moving, and suddenly the Knicks can't get out in transition. Josh Hart ain't getting those early slot attacks, and you're making the Knicks have to beat you at half court offense. And you know what? If the Knicks are going to hit 40% from three, and they're going to beat the Jimmy Tyler less Miami team by only 6 points in the game Miami should have won, then you have a great chance of not only winning this series, but actually ending it early. I think the Heat have the capability to end this series in 5. I think matchup-wise, this is good for them. But there are a few things they will have to do. One is who's stopping Jalen Brunson, because Brunson was 11 of 23 in game 1, but out of those 11 of 23 attempts, he was 2 out of 8 when Jimmy Butler was guarding him. So non-Jimmy Butler defensive possessions, he goes 9 of 15, if my math does me right here. And then in game 2, no Jimmy Butler, Brunson is 10 of 19, 6 of 10 from 3. Overall, the Knicks hit 16 of 40 from outside, 40%. The Heat were at 17 of 49. Free throw attempts, 30 for the Knicks, 17 for the Heat. If we want to talk about officiating and how decision-making of that game went, that's another conversation. But what do you think of the defensive job so far they've done in Brunson? Now, obviously, he's going to mismatch Hunt. They're going to send help to him when they can. But I feel like it's one of those situations too where you have one of Jimmy or Caleb to kind of contain him late in the contest. You have a chance, because I'd rather Randall try to beat the Heat late in the game than Brunson.
Caleb Martin is really the guy that I said going into the series. I expect to see him on Brunson a lot. We haven't seen it as much as I thought we would. But I think, and we've seen this throughout history. Eric Spoelstra is gonna hang on to some things and not play his full deck of cards in the first 2 games of a series, especially when he hasn't been on his own home floor yet. For example, in the Bucks series that we just saw, going back to Bam, he unleashed Point Bam in the second half, and Bam takes over the game. Yeah, in game 5, and Bam takes over the game. It's like they're up 3-1, they're coming back. What does he do? Bam, you run point. Jimmy, you cut off ball. Getting looks at Bam found him multiple times. Bam found him for a 3-pointer. There was an inverted pick and roll, I believe, with him and Jimmy. I don't remember if they actually finished that play, but you saw some things there that you didn't see throughout the series. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a deck of cards that he's waiting to use. Whereas Tom Thibodeau, I'm not so sure. Defensively, probably, to his credit, because he's a great defensive coach. But otherwise, we'll see. But to answer the Jalen Brunson piece, I think Caleb Martin is somebody we'll see on him. Spo likes to throw guys like that on guys like a Jalen Brunson, a Trae Young, who I think they're going to start treating Jalen Brunson like. Jalen Brunson also wasn't getting going early on because the Heat were sort of baiting RJ Barrett to take these shots and daring RJ Barrett to beat them. And he was hitting those shots to his credit in the first half. And then in the second half, you didn't really hear from him as much. That's when Jalen Brunson got going. That's when Julius Randle was able to keep it going just enough for them to escape that game. And I think that Jimmy Butler will see time on Jalen Brunson. I think that's something they might go to late in games. But I was surprised, and Brady Hawk called this, that they started off with Jimmy Butler on Jalen Brunson in the first quarter during game 1. But I think there's a lot of adjustments that Spo is going to make defensively and offensively, quite frankly, that we haven't seen yet. Like I last game to me, the offense was pretty simple. It was like, and this is what I thought was going to happen going into the game. Just jack up threes because they don't have Jimmy Butler, and maybe Bam can score a little bit on the inside, but they were doubling the hell out of him, so that wasn't possible. And, we'll see what happens. And look, they made enough threes early on, but they couldn't sustain it. And I think they're going to have more of an elaborate game plan once Jimmy comes back, especially with 3 days off in between games.
Yeah, you give Spo 3 days, you're essentially giving a genius like a bunch of time to figure some stuff out.
The UAAP is back for its second semester sports. Make sure to check out Get Blued for all your staple Team Ateneo gear, and of course for your men's basketball championship shirt in case you haven't gotten it yet. Visit Get Blued on social media and their stores at Shopee Mall and Laz Mall. And remember, always buy original.
I think the best decision Tibbs did in game 2 was to take Barrett out of that game. Towards the end of the final minutes of the fourth quarter, I believe he went with Grimes to go with Brunson and Randall. We didn't really see Barrett a lot. Now, the reason why
Josh
that
Hart
is,
also ended that game too.
Josh Hart, yeah, he had that big corner 3-pointer. And I thought that was a great idea because for me, Barrett's best skill is when he's getting to the rim, pulling up for those little floaters, trying to hit those layups, right? But Barrett at his best is trying to attack some mismatches, guys smaller than him getting to the rim and trying to score. Now, what Spo was doing well was trying to get the ball out of Brunson's hand. And I think we're going to see him try to get the ball out of Randall's hand as well and be like, okay, RJ Barrett, you want to beat us? Fine, take outside shots all game. Go to the rim if you want to. We'll challenge you. We'll live with that. By taking out Barrett, it was almost as if Brunson and Randall had to take control of the offense. And suddenly, there's better spacing in the floor with Grimes out there and with Hart out there. And Hartenstein really won them that game in the fourth quarter. That stretch where the Heat give up 4 offensive rebounds. Now, there's a bunch of stuff that happened down the final minutes of that game that caused the defeat, right? But I felt that stretch where Hartenstein keeps getting rebounds. Eventually, the Knicks score, and they just take control of the game from there, right? The Heat don't really recover. We'll see, because I think the Knicks can steal one of these games in Miami. Now, I think the Heat is better. I think I still have the Heat winning the series. I thought they'd win in 5. Now I'm thinking maybe 6. Outside shot at 7. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Knicks walk in there in game 3 and find a way to steal that win, especially if Butler's not back yet. Twitter melts down a little bit. Heat maybe win game 4, then take over from there. But definitely, if you're Miami and you're seeing how this Philadelphia-Boston series is playing out, Boston just dropped game 1. They beat them in game 2. But going back to Philly, that might be a different series. If you're Miami, you kind of want to end the series early, get Bam some rest, get Love and Larry some extra days to prepare, Butler to recover that ankle. By the way, we still haven't mentioned that Bam's still playing with that sore hip and that hammy. And maybe just get guys who've been playing a lot of minutes a little healthy. Do you think the Heat win these 2 games in Miami?
I think that they should, if it's up to them. But listen, the Knicks had the 5th best road record during the regular season in the NBA.
Yep,
good the only teams team. Are better. Yeah, they're a good road team, very good road team. The only teams that had better records were all like very good teams. One of them was Sacramento Kings. I think the Celtics, Bucks, and Sixers may have been the others. But look, the Knicks are a very good road team. It's not going to be easy to do this, but I think they're very capable of it. You absolutely cannot lose game 3. Game 3 is actually the first game in the entire playoffs that the Heat are betting favorites. The entire playoffs. They've been underdogs by double-digit points multiple games, including last game. They were 10-point underdogs, and they actually covered. The last game against the Bucks in game 5, they were underdogs by, I think it might have gotten to like 13 or something crazy like that, and they ended up winning that game, obviously. But, they've been very good against the spread and otherwise. But, yeah, the Knicks are very capable of stealing one. But if you're the Heat, obviously, like, you feel better about what just transpired because you figure, okay, Jimmy Butler gets back and remains healthy. You have a shot here. And a shot here at really, as you're saying, ending this early, because I think you can't, now you're on your home court. There are going to be Knicks fans there. You can't mess around. You have to win these 2 games, go up 3-1. If you give them back home court, obviously you're more than capable of winning out there. You did it already. You've done it how many times over the years, but at the same time, you don't want to put yourself in that position where it's 2-2 going back to the Garden, where, yes, you could dig yourself out of it, and they've dug themselves out of some holes this season to get to this point, but win these 2 games and, make that statement that the other team is just not as good as you. And Jimmy Butler is there laughing. after game 2. I feel like he probably could have played in game 2. It seemed like medical staff didn't want to risk it, whatever. But if he's healthy to go for those 2 games, they're probably going to be favored for both of them. And I think that they should win both. And it would not be wise to lose either of those games. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, for sure. They need to kind of go in there with the same disposition they had when Milwaukee came to town, which is, everyone thinks these guys are better than us. So let's go out there and play like we know we're better than them. Like we know, because see, that was the key to the Milwaukee series, aside from the fact that Jimmy Butler was like a few inches taller than Drew Holiday, and the Bucks seemed to not realize that and just seemed intent on letting him do whatever the hell he wanted. But number one, okay, look, the Heat is great on the road, but we also know they are susceptible to dropping some games at home. The Eastern Conference Finals from last season comes to mind, but they kind of just need to go in those games being like, okay, let's beat these guys because we know we're better than them. That was the key in the Milwaukee series. Somewhere in the middle point of that series, everyone was still saying, okay, the Bucks are down 2-1, but Giannis is going to come back. They're going to figure it out. Okay, they're down 3-1, but they're the Bucks. They're the number 1 seed. They're going to win this series anyway. But Miami, somewhere along the way, was like, hey, you know what? We're better than these guys. We beat them in game 1. Yeah, Giannis left, but we still dominated them. Dominated them in game 3. And game 4, it's like, okay, we can run with these guys. Let's prove it. I kind of want them to have that disposition against the Knicks in games 3 and 4, where it's like, okay, everyone's on this Knicks bandwagon. Everyone wants to see the Knicks maybe in the conference finals. Brunson's killing it. Randall's killing it. They've won. They've only lost once, I believe, with Randall in the lineup in the playoffs. Let's just take their hearts out. And if Jimmy is there, I think they're capable of doing that. But definitely, I feel like the other guys need to have that consistency. I know Caleb's going to be consistent in terms of his defensive effort, how maybe he can push the pace in transition. Vincent's shooting can be quite streaky. So because it's been quite good lately, I'm expecting a drop off soon. But the Heat are going to need Love and Lowry to be better. They were great in game 1, game 2, not so much. And again, if Bam can just be more physical, get Robinson and Hartenstein in trouble, and avoid those offensive rebounds for the Knicks, which were killers, then I think they should win both games by multiple possessions.
I think that, so they're favored right now by 3.5 points, depending on where you look for the next game. They should cover that, right? The thing about the Knicks is like they're a team that they relish the idea of not just winning on the road, but making those sort of hustle plays and taking the air out of the crowd, kind of like what the Heat did in Milwaukee multiple times, right? But to your point, I think if we look back at game 3 against the Bucks, the Heat just came out and they blew them out in that game. That was their best just end-to-end performance, maybe other than game 1, but that was probably their best end-to-end performance. And in game 1, the way they came out was they were very adamant, like, yeah, we're here, we're not just happy to be here. This is actually a different team that you saw in the play-in, because a bunch of us thought that they were going to get rolled over the way that they just sort of whimpered out of the play-in. And then they come out and they're up 15 with Giannis on the court. And before he gets hurt, like they were dominating that game before Giannis even got hurt, and it didn't even make a difference. So yeah, I think they should win these 2, but we'll see, because like Tom Thibodeau is not going to just roll. And the thing that I love about this series is that regardless of who's out there wearing the uniforms, whatever the case may be, these 2 teams are going to compete. So I don't expect any of these games to be blowouts necessarily. Maybe when we get to the end, one team is just very tired. But I think that especially these 2 games, they're going to be close. And the Heat have to be able to make plays down the stretch. They've been a great second half team, other than last game, although they were very good in the third quarter still. But they've been a great second half team. Like before last game, they had come back 3 straight times after being down at halftime to be able to win. Well, that's not the position you always want to put yourself in. And then lo and behold, you actually have a halftime lead, and then you can't sustain it. So maybe they're better when they're not front running. Something about this season, something about this season probably lends itself to be the case. So maybe they'll just, they'll miss shots early in game 3, piss everybody off. They'll be down like 6 at halftime, and then all of a sudden you'll see it's hurt, and then they end up winning by 5 or something along those lines. Classic 2022-2023 Miami Heat basketball.
LaSalle fans and Animo supporters, this is your best shot to secure the most incredible DLSU merchandise in the market through Green Blooded. From 12 midnight until 5 a.m. on May 5, Green Blooded will have a sale on Shopee where certain shirts can be purchased at the affordable price of only 55 pesos. But that's not all. From now until May 9, you can purchase the best Green Blooded shirts for only 250 pesos. Buy collared shirts or hoodies while getting a 100 peso discount and secure vouchers plus other goodies. Amazing, right? So what are you waiting for? Visit Green Blooded on Shopee now and show off your animal spirit.
And I was thinking about it too. In 2020, when they made the finals, it was in the bubble, right? So we didn't get the Heat home crowd. 2021 was really a shit show from the beginning. When they went back to Miami, that series felt over already. Once they really lost that game one in 2021 that went to overtime, it felt like the series was done. Then last year, that's really the first time we see like a Heat playoff run. This version of the Heat with the Jimmy era, right? At home. And we're kind of seeing it again now. We saw it in games 3 and 4. And there's just something about Jimmy and that crowd once he gets going and once he starts roaring and once he just starts entering that zone where he kind of carries his teammates and the Miami crowd with him. And that's why I think if the Heat can get some early opportunities in transition again, some of those 3-pointers from Duncan or Max on the break, Jimmy dunking and then shouting to the crowd. And, the Knicks are good, but this Knicks team hasn't exactly been this deep in the playoffs yet, right? They were like 2 years ago, but no, they got eliminated in the first round 2 years ago. But I want to see how they react to being on the road and being in this Miami crowd with Jimmy going, because I think once that happens and maybe the Heat build a 7 to 8 point lead, the Knicks are going to fold towards the end of the contest.
I'm not sure if they will in the sense of like they'll just be like overwhelmed, but I think it'll be a case of just trying to do too much. Mm-hmm. This is something that like Julius Randle is like, he's in the starting 5 of trying to do too much sometimes. Like he can really like just get into this mode of like, all right, it's me against the world, and then just throw up some bricks. And other times he'll make some shots like he did against the Heat that one time in Miami where he scored 40, whatever it was. And it's like, how is he making all these shots? And they're super contested. And it looks like he's just throwing them up there and they're just dropping in. To his credit, He had an awesome game that one time. I also think that clouded people's judgment on how he actually does against the Heat in totality. Because if you look at the numbers overall, since he got to the Knicks, there's a lot of very, very, very inefficient basketball there. I think also a lot of losses. But I don't think the Knicks are a team that's going to fold. I think they're a team that's like, you have to put them in a position where they want to play hero ball, which I think Eric Spoelstra's like he's got one toe in, one toe out of, where they dare RJ Barrett to take these shots, they dare Julius Randle to take these shots. And, the Miami Heat crowd, like I think Knicks fans think that they're just going to go and take over the arena. And I think there will be some Knicks fans there, but there's going to be a lot of Heat fans there that they really get behind these guys when they're rolling. One thing I don't want to see is if Bam gets the ball at the elbow and he's sort of sizing up his man, that everyone like you hear like this sort of buzz in the crowd. This happened in the Bucks series of a couple years ago when they got swept, and you hear people yelling like shoot, because they're just very impatient with Bam and treat him kind of like Chris Bosh, and they don't understand like he's not a guy that's going to give you 25 a game, even though he could show the flashes of it, and they have to accept that that's okay because most NBA players are not that.
Right. And listen, Bam's not going to get to that range where he scores 25 a game until he can start catching the ball cleanly, consistently in short rolls. Those fingers and those hands stop losing.
They also got to throw him better passes too. They don't have great entry passers on this team.
They do. And they need like a guard who can attract the attention to give him more space to catch those passes. But at the same time, every time it feels like he goes ISO in the post or he tries to take his man off the dribble, it's like 1 every 3 times he'll lose the ball or someone will swipe it. And I think until Bam really tightens up those handles, then we can't really expect him to be the kind of scorer that many want him to be. But who knows? Maybe at their best, he doesn't need to be that scorer that everyone wants him to be. Maybe
that's
he's almost
what I think ultimately.
Maybe his ceiling is a better Draymond, a Draymond on defense, and maybe not Draymond's passing abilities and his IQ, but more size, better rebounding. Maybe, like you said, he's the 3rd best scorer in the championship team. I think in a perfect world, that is the case, right? In a perfect world, maybe that second scorer is Jimmy and that first scorer is Dame Lillard. But that's a conversation for the offseason, which, I'm sure Jimmy Butler right now does not want to think about. Okay, so final two questions before I let you go here. One, how do you see the series ending? And two, realistically, how deep of a playoff run do you think Miami can have?
Great way to end it. I said Heat in 6 at the beginning, like before the series ended up happening. I said that they would win game 1, lose game 2, so far right on track. So I'm gonna take my chances and make some more picks. I'll take them to win games 3 and 4, lose game 5 at the Garden, finish it out at home in game 6. And as far as how deep I think they can go, it's likely that if they win this series, because look, the Knicks can win the series. They're absolutely capable of winning this series, right? If they hit enough shots, they had 40% from 3 in game 2. Not sure that that's going to happen recurringly throughout the series, but that's something that could happen once or twice more, right? They hit enough shots, they get enough stops. Again, this is a series where there's going to be a lot of close games, a lot of agonizing basketball for both fan bases, I'm sure, and just basketball watchers in general. But yeah, I'm sticking with the Heat to win the series. Pick them in 6. Wouldn't surprise me if the Knicks ended up winning it in say 7. But Heat in 6, and in terms of how far they can go, it's probably likely that they lose in the conference finals to whomever it is. And it would probably be Boston if we're being honest, but I think they can give Boston hell. And I absolutely think that they could surprise Boston, because one thing we have to start thinking about is Tyler Hero is about 3 weeks, I think, since the broken hand already getting there. And broken hands are usually 4 to 6, could be longer. We don't know. There's like no signs that he's going to come back anytime soon. But if they make it past the Knicks, that's something that you could start thinking about, where, he actually might come back into the fold, even though there was reports that they don't quite miss him that much. But I think they probably lose in the conference finals if they get past it. But I think they can beat the Celtics, because the Celtics just don't always play high IQ basketball this year. And Joe Mazzulla is not Ime Udoka. So the Heat are going to have a distinct coaching advantage. I actually think they'll have more of a coaching advantage against Joe Mazzulla than they would against Doc Rivers or Tom Thibodeau. So that would be interesting to see how that series unfolds. And then also Marcus Smart, not as good this year as he was last year. And the two Jays, I mean, they're dangerous, but man, they could really do some damage the other way when they're not clicking. So I think that's probably where it'll end. But they could win that series. They could win that series if they get far. But look, you got to get past a legitimately good Knicks team first before you can get to all that.
Right. So just to clarify on that, it was announced on April 18 that Hero would have surgery. He had surgery on April 21. So
we're 2 weeks then.
Yes, we're about 2 weeks there. So if Hero does come back, it would probably, best case scenario, would probably be tail end of the Eastern Conference Finals, or maybe start of the NBA Finals. And my prediction, I think if the Heat win both games at home, the series ends in 5. I think they're going to win game 3 and 4, and then the Knicks are going to go back there, game 5, kind of half knowing the series is over, kind of half knowing they still have to win to give their crowd something. And Jimmy and company are going to do what they did in game 5 in Milwaukee, which was go in there and just kind of steal the series in 5 if they can. If the Knicks win one of the 2 games in Miami coming up, I think the Heat still win game 5. They come back and close it out in game 6 in Miami. This is all assuming Butler's healthy, of course. And in terms of how far they can go, I think they can get to the NBA Finals. And I think that's where they eventually end up losing if they get past the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think that's because the Heat know that they match up well with Boston. It just feels like, regardless of records, this Heat iteration against the Celtics with the 2 Jays, it just feels like a close matchup every time they go head to head. And as much as Miami's offense can struggle against that Boston defense, it can go the other way too, especially with the turnovers, right? But that's kind of where you're going to wish Oladipo would be present. So I had the Celtics winning the championship before the playoffs, but I kind of think Philadelphia wins the series. I just have a feeling about it. I think Philadelphia beats Boston in about 6 games. And if that's the case, I like the Heat's chances against Philadelphia. I do. I like the Heat's ability to throw that zone defense and get Philadelphia off course in the half court. I like how the Heat have players they can throw at Harden, and I think Bam. That's where Bam's going to shine against Embiid on defense. But I just don't think the Heat have enough to beat a team like the Nuggets, the Warriors, or even the Lakers. I think they might have a shot against the Suns, but not the other three.
Yeah, and I don't think the Suns get there the way things are looking. I do think that the Heat probably match up better against Philadelphia. Like there are some Heat fans that I've spoken to. There are some Heat fans that I've spoken to that they want Philadelphia to beat Boston because that's who they'd rather see, and they've kind of just had Philly's number. Like really, and you know what I mean. And it's a lot of the same cast of characters you saw last year, except they added PJ Tucker, who people think that he's not really adding much to their team now. And, you know, this is kind of where he started to fall off from Miami last season. So that would be pretty funny to see that sort of juxtaposition. But I think I think any of those series, by the way, would be awesome. Like they would be fun. They would go at least 6 games.
For sure.
I think even if the Knicks get past the Heat, which again, I'm not putting my money on that, but it could happen. But even if they did, I think that'll be fun. Knicks Sixers, or Knicks Celtics. But ultimately, I do think we'll see Heat Celtics if I had to put my money on it, and I may or may not have in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is something that, like, look, I did not think they were going to beat the Bucks. I don't think anyone did except they did.
Yep.
You know, and like the conversations we're having now that most people expect them to beat the Knicks now after it being 1-1, not before the series. And it's like, look at how they've to quote Ethan Skolnick on the way out, they made the season matter. Yep. And I will reiterate, 30 playoff wins since Jimmy Butler joined the team. Mm-hmm. And that's more than everyone in the Eastern Conference except the Boston Celtics, who just tied them now.
Right. I hate, you know what, too? No matter what we say, no matter what we think, I kind of know what Jimmy feels about all of this. He doesn't give a fuck.
Right.
Anyway, Bryan, thank you so much for joining me, man. I appreciate it. Hope to have you on sometime again in the future. Great talk, great Heat talk. The season just went from what looked like a catastrophe to suddenly a memorable run, because I think ultimately just being the best, having the best 8-over-1 upset in NBA history, considering everything, you gotta give them props for that. But who knows? They might even get further. Bryan, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. Tell people where they can find your work.
Find me at Bryan Fonseca NY on social media. Obviously the stuff I do at 5 on the Floor, but I also, you know, you'll see me on other platforms like Action Network, where I do some NBA, boxing, and MMA betting content. New York Post, where I'll hop on, do some on-camera stuff, and my boxing show, The Mandatory, on YouTube. You said you got 1,000 subscribers. Congrats on that. We're trying to do the same thing. We started up less than 3 months ago. We're over 500, so halfway there already. And for anybody who likes boxing, likes MMA, likes betting, or just a good show overall, because we don't do it for just diehard people. We also do it for casuals who want to learn about the sport. We welcome you as well. So definitely check that out.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, man. See you soon.
Yep, absolutely.